This week, Sally, good evening. At least from a consumer perspective, we know that this Wednesday's budget is not going to be characterized by any major tax hikes, so say the analysts. It does not mean, though, that the consumer will not be impacted by what Minister Enoch Godongwana delivers this week. And I want to bring in Chief Economist at Stanlib, Kevin Lings, to give his take on what we should look out for. Kevin, thanks indeed for your time. So over and above the allocations to the respective departments, this revenue windfall that we collected at the end of last year, I think it's about 180 billion rand more than we had initially expected at the start of the year. I mean, the question really is, do we use that money to pay off debt? Do we start propping up the grant system? What we do with that extra money is one big highlight in this budget, isn't it?
Hi, Devan, that's exactly right. It's absolutely crucial how we utilize those funds. What you don't want to see is government simply squander that windfall. So from our perspective, some of the money obviously is going to be allocated to the social payments. That's already been discussed in the State of the Nation address. So that's going to take up an additional 40 to 45 billion. I think some of the money will actually be allocated to Denel, perhaps the post office. So there are some state-owned enterprises that probably need some direct support. And then the rest of the money you really want to see going to a reduction in debt. You don't want that money simply spent or allocated across all of the government departments. So we've got a very clear idea of what we want to do with it. Now, there are a couple of areas that are clearly in focus, and the one is infrastructure development, and there's no doubt that government doesn't spend nearly enough on infrastructure, but we need to drive that infrastructure, I think, through public-private partnerships. So maybe directing some of those funds towards that type of initiative, certainly on the energy side, the port side, the railway side, that would help enormously. We also have to be mindful of the fact that in previous years, our debt got excessively high and the debt servicing cost is extremely high. So anything we can do to really mitigate the debt level, bring down the debt servicing costs. So my expectation is some of the money will be allocated, but hopefully the bulk of the extra revenue goes into debt reduction and a stabilization of government's fiscal position.
Kevin, you speak of debt. There was some word as we led up to this budget that we could also see government going towards paying some money towards that 400 billion rand Eskom debt. I mean, will that take away anything? What's your take on it?
I don't think it's a good move right at this stage. Obviously, Eskom is in a desperate position and it's got to be resolved one way or the other. But there's a risk here that if you simply allocate a huge chunk of money to Eskom under current circumstances, are you really going to put Eskom in a significant better position, or are you simply going to lapse back in over a couple of years to exactly the same debt position you're in currently? So it would be way better to come up with a more comprehensive solution to how you're going to manage Eskom going forward, and then see whatever debt you have to deal with at that point. We are in the process of breaking up Eskom. The transmission element is being moved out of Eskom, but we're not entirely clear about how the whole structure works, and you would want to see more clarity before you throw tens of billions of rands at the problem.
And just a quick one. Do you think there's a chance that the finance minister, in some shape or form, can he put some money back into the pockets of consumers? We know there are no major tax hikes. Is there any other way he could do that?
Well, he hopefully he does it at least through the elimination of fiscal drag. So as we have inflation, obviously inflation tends to then push people into higher tax brackets, and as a consequence, you tend to pay more tax, not because you've got any more real income, but just the effect of inflation. And I think the minister is in a position to at least provide that relief to the consumer. And that's in the order of 13, 15 billion, and it is meaningful. It doesn't mean we're going to be walking around with a huge amount of money, but at least we'll feel that we've been compensated for the effect of inflation. And then perhaps what he could do is just go a little bit easier on the normal tax hikes, the excise duties, the fuel levy, the road accident fund, and maybe not push through the same sort of increases that we've seen previously. I don't think we're in a position to give a significant tax reduction at this stage. Ultimately, we've got to recognize that the government has to get their fiscal position into much better shape. We've lost our international investment grade credit rating. We've got to go closer to getting that back. So the minister's not in a position to really hand out, if you like, a whole lot of money. He's got to show discipline.
Okay, great. We're going to have to leave it there. Kevin Lings from Stanlib, thanks very much indeed for your time. Let's take a quick